Hello and welcome to this presentation on charity accounting software. My name's Stuart Davis. I'm from Stuart Davis Consulting. So we're often asked, well, I'm a charity, how do I pick which software to use for my accounting? And the secret is to this, there is no good accounting package that will do everything that a charity requires to do and yet is cheap enough for a small charity to afford to use it. All the softwares that are out there are generally based around businesses or individuals. There's very few that are specific for charities. So there needs to be some kind of bespoking take place, which is expensive, or you need to be able to compromise on what you want the software to do and sledgehammer yourself into a hole where you don't necessarily fit. That, unfortunately, is the life of all charities. So how do you pick them? Here's my 4 things to look at. What you need depends on how complicated you are. What do you need to report on? Do you need to report to a lot of donors? Do you need to look after a lot of restricted funds? Do you need to do things in different currencies? Do you have different budget holders or departments in your charity that you need to report to individually? Do you need a different kind of report for your trustees that you need for your management? All those things can add complexity to things. The next one is the volumes of things that you have. If you only have a handful of invoices to pay to suppliers, maybe a couple of staff, maybe the odd expense, then you don't need a giant software that will do all those things for you. But if you've got a huge number of those things, you've got a lot of direct debits, a lot of things coming in that you need to just look at, you have a massive bank reconciliation to do, then you need a system that's going to support you to do that instead. Then have a look at what the range of other things you might need your system to do, as well as reporting, as well as getting those transactions in. What do you need it to talk to? What do you need it to spit out? Each additional requirement gives you something else you need to look for. But more importantly, as I say, that big orange one in the bottom right-hand corner, there isn't a single software, unless you have a lot of money to bespoke it, that will necessarily do the things you want. So what are the things you're prepared to compromise on? What are the essentials? What are the nice to haves? So that first one again, how complicated am I? This really comes down to the question at the top. How many codes do I need in my system? How many columns of different things do I need to be able to split things into to be able to report on them in a straightforward and efficient way? Now, you will always need what's known as a nominal code. Those are the codes that represent your statutory accounts or the kinds of things like travel or professional services that you want to be able to categorize things in a straightforward way. If you want a different code then to be able to split out restricted funds, this is known as dimension, then you're going into a second dimension of codes. If you need an internal report, which is different from what you're doing for your statutory reports, if you need to be able to split it by department, for example, then you need a third dimension. If you want to be able to split out what employees are doing or have a view of that separately, that's a fourth dimension. If you want to be able to join things together in some kind of way, that's a fifth dimension. If you have different entities, that's a sixth dimension. So the more these codes you build up, the more the ways you have to split it and dice it because of your complication of its charity, the bigger the system needs to be able to accommodate that. So as you go to the right on this screen, it gets more complicated. So if you go from one legal entity to lots of legal entities in a group or a movement that you want to bring together, that's a code. If you're only in one country, it's relatively straightforward. If you're looking in different countries and different currencies, you need more codes. If you're not split into departments, nice and easy, great. Lots of departments, you need more codes. You need, so on and so forth. Restricted funds are the big one. The more restricted funds you have, the more powerful your reporting needs to be. 2 or 3 restricted funds, you can probably do on the back of an envelope. 50 restricted funds, you need a good system. Then what volumes do you have? What do your transactions look like? Let's say this is really how much do you need to churn through each month to keep your accounts up to date? What do you need in terms of invoices to suppliers? What do you need to keep in top of in terms of your income? How does your income come in? How many staff expenses do you do? Do you do payroll? Each one of those things you add on as extra transactions, and each time you increase the amount of volume you do beyond one person's ability to cope with it, you need the system to cope with it instead. So the more and more you have, the more complicated you are, the bigger the system you need. And then there's all those add-ons that you may or may not need depending on your reporting. And these can be part of the system, they can be off the system, they could be a plugin in the system, but you need to be able to consider what of those different things are. So timesheets. A lot of donors want timesheets. They want a piece of paper telling them exactly how you bill their time. Or you might want it for internal reasons, just to work out profitability of things, how costs are going around the place, who is and who isn't fully allocated. If you need timesheets, that's an added on thing. VAT, are you VAT registered? Maybe. So VAT only goes through to HMRC now through something called Make a Tax Digital, or MTD. You need a system to be able to do that. And then if you're also doing partial VAT, well, that's a complication in itself. You need a system that can cope with the extra rates and where you're going to put those in the different places too. Reporting we talked about, but what I'm talking about here is, do you need it to spit out to another system? Some people use things like Power BI or some other kind of aggregator to bring things together from different systems and pull them all together. Do you need it to do that? Or do you need it to just spit out a standard report that you've already created? Or is that all off system in a spreadsheet somewhere? Work out how you want that to happen. But if you want it in the system, that's an extra thing to worry about. Budgeting, similarly. So all the things we talked about, transactions, this is what we refer to as your actuals, the things that's actually happening. What about budgeting? You need something to compare it against, a forecast maybe. Do you need your system to hold that? Or do you want that offline? And then there's other integrations. What do you need to bring in? Do you want a bank feed coming in from your bank to tell you what your transactions are? Do you want it to spit out to your CRM or take information in from your CRM about where donations are coming from? All those different things will make the system more complicated. So then we need to have a look at what all your requirements are. Once you've worked them all out, you specify them all down, tell us what's essential, what are the nice to haves, what are you happy with the system doing, what are you happy to do outside the system or do in a different complete way. Where are you able to compromise on being handling volumes and those kind of things. Once you work that out, you're going to fall into one of these three tiers of software. Now, the basic version are ones that don't have a lot of codes, that can't handle a lot of legal entities, some of them can't even handle foreign exchange very well. So if you're simple, don't have a lot of departments, probably don't have a lot of restricted funds, certainly aren't sending your money overseas, then a couple of these systems like QuickBooks, Xero, Sage 50, Liberty accounts, those kind of things, those are kind of the level you're looking at. And when you get some of those together, they're relatively easy, straightforward, they're quite intuitive, you can just get going with them quite often, maybe ask for a little help to set up. License fees, well, depending exactly which version you get, some of them are very cheap, some of you can get for nothing if you're not for profit, if you ask them very nicely. But if you include lots of stuff like VAT, payroll, all those kind of bits and bobs, reporting, budgeting, it's not unheard of for you to hit £100 a month as those as a license fee. Next level up though, there is a bit of a leap to the mid-range ones. These are the ones where there are more codes, where you can handle a lot more of that splitting out into different categories. You can keep all your restricted funds separate. You can have your internal departments reported separately. You can have all the bits and bobs integrations that you need. These kind of things are like called Sage and Tax, implicit access dimensions, as long as you're not doing foreign exchange. Usually the ways these work is there is an implementation fee because you need somebody to set it up for you, and that can come to £10,000 to £15,000. And then you have an ongoing license fee. And again, that can be expensive. That can be anywhere depending on your size between 10 to £20,000 a year, maybe even a little bit more than that, depending how many users you have. So you only go for one of these ones if that is cheaper than employing another person to do all that accounting for you. You get past half a person on a qualified accountant rate, these things are worth having. But not all charities can reach that, obviously. Smaller charities, you're probably going to end up with them on the basic ones. You need somebody potentially to help you get the most out of it, sledgehammer you into a system, as we say, that isn't really suited for charity needs. But on the top level, money no object, is something called an ERP, an Enterprise Resource Program. These will be big chunky things that will not only do all your accounting for you, but integrate seamlessly with things like CRM, because it's all part of the same software. They'll give you things like HR packages in there. They'll give you reporting things. They'll give you project management bits and bobs. And you can choose whatever modules you want. And then there'll be a nice person there to help you bespoke it exactly to your organization, so you've got all the workflows that you need. Really, really expensive. These things are like Aggresso, NetSuite, SAP. You need to be a charity earning at least £1 million a year to be able to afford one of these things. And I would say probably between the 2 to 3 million to make it really worthwhile for the cost savings you do. So that's there. I'm just putting it out there that that's a thing. But unless you have bags of money or a really, really happy donor, you're probably going to end up in one of the bottom two. And probably for small ones, the very bottom one. So just be understandable. That's where you're going. You will need help potentially to set them all up. But that doesn't mean that you have to do the picking. What you could be doing is writing down a tender. Now, I've covered this in a procurement video separately, but if you've got an idea of what you need and what you can compromise on, what your essential requirements are, write a document that sets those out. Put it down, maybe a page, make it really clear, and then send it to the accounting system companies. Tell them with coming back to you, telling you what they can do. Get them to confirm it. Then you can choose what they tell you can fit and what you can afford. And then you can have a conversation about where those desirable things come in. You can get a contract behind it and you know what's going on. Maybe that might be a better approach if you just don't know where to start at all. So I hope that was useful. It was a very quick whistle-stop tour around accounting software and how you get to choose one. Obviously, every charity is unique. You all have your own requirements, your own reporters, your own donors, your own currency needs, and your own risk appetite, and of course the amount of money that you have to spend on these things. So we can't cover that for everybody, obviously, in such a short video. But if you do need any help, therefore any specific questions related to you, drop us a line at info@stuartdavisconsulting.co.uk. We're on LinkedIn as well, so you can message us on there if you'd like to find us. More than happy to help with anything. Just give us a shout. But if we don't hear from you, obviously good luck with your software finding, and we hope it works out for the best.